Hey everyone, it's Amit. So the eviction moratorium is currently firmly in the hands of the Supreme Court, but the administration is effectively on an all-out offensive to basically maintain the eviction moratorium and in the process go ahead and crush landlord and landlord groups. And this is being done even after the constitutionality of the whole eviction moratorium is basically in question. The administration has already come out and said that they do not necessarily believe that the eviction moratorium is on strong enough or robust legal footing, and Congress has failed to enact any incremental legislation that would basically expand the remit of the CDC such that they can impose the eviction moratorium in the first place. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. Where are we with this whole Supreme Court case and what does it mean? But before I get too far into it, don't forget to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm as well as subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. So the administration has of course asked the Supreme Court to continue to maintain the eviction moratorium and have stated that it's lawful and urgently needed response to an unprecedented public emergency. And this is of course in relation to the whole D variant and how it continues to expand throughout the country. But with that said, there is several indications or several data points that would potentially suggest that the D variant, for all intents and purposes, has peaked in certain parts of the country and is in effect on a bit of a downward trajectory. Even Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who was the prior FDA commissioner, has come out and said that as of Monday, August 23rd, that I thought there were indications that the South was peaking, and I think it's pretty clear right now that the South has in fact peaked. And yet, over 92% of the country continues to be under the cover of the whole eviction moratorium. When the eviction moratorium was previously being instituted, there was this talk about how the map with which the CDC coverage of the eviction moratorium is put in place will continue to evolve and change and this, that, and the other, but that does not appear to be the case as the number of regions that are basically covered by this whole eviction moratorium continues to expand. With that said, there's other pieces of good news as well, where the number of vaccines are basically got a bit of an upward trajectory, which is definitely a good thing. And some of this is perhaps driven by the FDA approval of some of these vaccines, and then also the whole notion by the administration kind of like driving employers to basically require or mandate vaccines for their employee base. So just going back to this whole legal battle, a coalition of landlords in the state of Alabama and Georgia have said that Congress never gave CDC the staggering amount of power it claims, and have continually asked various lower courts to, and now the Supreme Court, to remove the eviction moratorium. These groups are even questioning the level of independence or separation between the judicial branch of the government relative to the executive branch of the government, in terms of saying basically that the executive branch of the government is basically influencing the judicial branch of the government. The group has cited that unless the courts halt the moratorium, Congress will know that it can legislate through pressure campaigns and sit-ins. The executive branch will know that they can disregard the views of the majority of the justices with impunity, and this court will know that its carefully considered rulings will be roundly ignored. The administration is of course continuing to cite rising cases for all intents and purposes without addressing the core of the issue really being whether the CDC can basically impose such an eviction moratorium in the first place, whether it falls within their realm of authority. And the crux of this issue basically goes back to the whole Public Health Services Act that was issued in 1944 that basically talks about the CDC and its authority to make and enforce such regulations necessary to prevent the introduction, transmission, or spread of communicable diseases. So that in itself may suggest that the CDC basically has this level of authority, but if you read further in that whole legislation, it talks about how this basically relates to the spread of disease from animals and is a bit dated in that particular manner. With all of that said, there's still some level of hope when it comes to landlord and landlord groups, because previously when this whole thing went to the Supreme Court effectively ruled with the slimmest or the narrowest margins of the 5-4 ruling that basically allowed the eviction moratorium to basically continue. And one of the justices that basically tipped the scale in the favor of keeping the eviction moratorium was Justice Kavanaugh. And Justice Kavanaugh has come out and said, or has basically referenced the notion that he's questioning whether this thing actually has firm legal footing in the first place. So there is some notion of possibility that the Supreme Court may actually tip their prior judgment and go in the favor of the landlords by effectively lifting the whole eviction moratorium. But where this becomes a bit of a question or a concern is, will the administration then go ahead and appeal this whole judgment, or at least file some procedural filings that would basically try to buy more time or create more stall in this whole process, which is definitely something that is yet to be seen, but is definitely definitely not outside the realm of possibility, because the administration has already come out and said, I can't guarantee you the court won't rule that. We don't have the authority, but at least we'll have the ability, if we have to appeal, to keep this going for at least a month. I hope longer than that. So this continues to be a stall tactic by the administration to let this thing continue to persist for even longer than potentially anticipated. We should likely hear from the Supreme Court later on this week, and fingers crossed it's basically in favor of lifting this eviction moratorium. I'll of course keep you updated, so definitely subscribe and ring that notification bell so you guys are advised when new videos are basically released, and I'll of course see you in the next one.